the greater the diversity of bacteria in the gut, the greater the functionality that it has. The prebiotic is your nourishment. What the postbiotic does, this one, is it really works with the immune system.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Welcome to Ancient and Brave. My name's Madison. I am a holistic nutritionist here at Ancient and Brave. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the next era of gut health and how it pertains to many different areas of our lives, such as hormones and sleep and skin and immunity and much more. I am so excited to be sitting alongside Donna James. Donna is a triple certified nutritionist, a advanced functional medicine practitioner, and has a lot of training in cognitive behavioral therapy. She's the author of The Archetype Diet, where she explores the intersection of hormones, self-worth, and nutritional biochemistry. Her clinical work centers around metabolic health, gastrointestinal disorders, and mold-related illness. What I love about Donna's work is that it does not separate psychology with physiology. She really knows how to look at the whole woman. So Donna, thank you so much for being here.
Madison and Ancient Brave, thank you for having me. And thank you everybody for coming out on such a cold, windy LA night.
Yes, thank you for leaving your homes today. I know it's really hard in LA to leave your home when it rains. So Donna, can you share how you came to this point of really bringing physiology and psychology together in your clinical work? And what has that integration revealed to you about digestive dysfunction, particularly in women?
My original training was in the UK about 25 years ago, where I trained as a nutritional therapist. So I always came in with both the psychological side and looking at the physiology of the body. So I viewed it through that lens. And that was really quite progressive at that time to look at that. The Institute was started by a psychologist who realized that treating mental health issues was really challenging just with talk therapy, and you really did want to look at somebody's diet and understand the biochemistry and where imbalances were. So that was the base training for me. And the same concept applies to digestive health and many other areas of our physical self. So that's the primer for that. In terms of digestive health, I'm actually going to give you an example that I was given, and we can go into more detail. And this is not one of my clients, it's somebody else's. And very early days where this person was really struggling with IBS. And they'd done the stool testing, worked on things like parasites, candida, correcting the gut microbiome, and nothing was being resolved. And because of the psychological background, he delved into more of what was going on. And what came out was that her IBS was triggered because of a whole lot of shame and guilt due to a Christmas party that she was at. She was a very happily married woman. This is in the UK in the 90s. And she had a little fling with somebody in the broom cupboard. And so that set off her digestive issues. So that was the parting words to me as a graduate student, that don't just focus on the biochemistry. You do want to look at what's going on from a psychological perspective. So we can definitely talk about more of that as we go through this, because there are so many ways that the way that you think influences your digestive system. Actually, I might just touch on that. There are really sort of three ways that stress can impact your digestive system. We often tend to think that it's just cortisol. That is one aspect. There is also your vagus nerve, which is really your nervous system, which is working through a frequency. So that can set things off as well. And that will have certainly an impact on your motility. And then there's your enteric nervous system. Again, another part of the nervous system. And your enteric nervous system is where 90% of your serotonin is created. We often think that the serotonin is created by the gut microbiome. It's not. It's your enteric nervous system. And that influences the motility there. So if you're stressed, it's going to have an impact on those things. So there are three mechanisms behind that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Your nervous system, do you mean your vagal?
Yeah, your vagus nerve is one of them. Mm-hmm. So 20% of what's going on in your brain is going to go through the vagus nerve to the gut. And then 80% of what's happening in the gut goes to the brain. So that's that bidirectional flow there. So you have what's going on with your adrenals, with cortisol, you have the vagus nerve, and you have your enteric nervous system all influencing the gut.
So that brings me to my next question. Gut health is everywhere right now.
Mm-hmm.
To elimination diets, all the microbiome testing, feels like there's a probiotic for everything. From your clinical perspective, why do you think it's become so overcomplicated? And when you strip it back, what actually matters in terms of digestive resilience long term?
So in 2008, 2009, there was the Human Microbiome Project. And they started to publish papers on the microbiome in about 2012. And there was a seminal paper that showed when you took the microbiota from obese rodents and put it into sterile rodents and you fed them a high-fat diet, they became obese. And they repeated this study and they did different variations, and it continued to play out. So that was very important information, particularly from a metabolic health perspective. So that's where it really kicked off a lot of the gut microbiome work. Since then, the researchers have very much been looking into, what are the strains that have an influence on our physical self. So you would have heard about there's this particular strain or this particular probiotic that helps with mental health. This is going to help with cardiovascular health. This is going to help with metabolic health. That is a little bit of the wellness industry who likes newness, taking pieces of research and saying, this is going to work for you. It doesn't necessarily happen. Right? So we have a lot of that. When people think gut health today, most people are thinking the gut microbiome. They're not thinking about the entire system. The other piece is we have tried to simplify a complicated process, and in that missed the nuances. If we think about biology and how we were taught about our digestive system, most of us are thinking it is a hollow tube. Everybody was taught it's like a hose, right? That's what happens, right? It goes, and it's one cell thick. That's just a terrible misnomer. And so it's not really one cell thick. So that there is describing this, it's called an epithelial layer. But that layer, and I'm going to talk about your small intestine and large intestine, is sandwiched between two layers of your immune system. So you have this one cell thick, which is called the barrier function. And then you've got a layer of mucus on top of that, which is part of your immune system. That there captures pathogens. So if it's in the gut, it's going to latch onto it so that it doesn't attach to the gut lining and start to proliferate. So that mucus layer is very important. Then you have that one cell thick barrier layer, which is held together with tight junctions. You guys would have heard of leaky gut, intestinal permeability. So that is an important piece. And then underneath that, you have another layer of your immune system. Things that you would be familiar with, like your T cells, your B cells, your mast cells. Underneath that, you have your enteric nervous system. So that's what's producing 90% of your serotonin and also most of your melatonin. Then under that, you have muscle that is creating that peristaltic action, right? That process there. So if you want to think about the digestive system, think about it through that lens. So you have a barrier function, you have your immunity, and you have your nervous system. So when you are looking for products, you want products that support those layers. And it's not always a product. It might not, like something for the enteric nervous system, could be things like breath work. Right? It doesn't have to be a molecule. So is that complicating it, or is that making it easier to understand through the layers? Yes, okay, not some nods. Okay.
Thank you. So at Ancient and Brave, we actually just received our gut support product here in the States. We're very excited about it, called Biome. It's a triple action gut supporting formula with pre and postbiotics and L-glutamine. So in terms of our Biome, we look at this lens of supporting the terrain of our microbiome instead of trying to override the system. So with that context in mind, can you speak to why that kind of foundational approach is so important?
I love the word terrain. This is what the naturopaths use. And a good way to understand this is, imagine you have a fishbowl and it's got dirty water in it. And the fish, they keep dying. If you just keep replacing the fish, that is, I'm just putting in a probiotic every time, what happens, right? It's not going to be great. So the terrain is thinking about those other layers, your immunity and your barrier function. Think about those. So that's what you want to support. And that's how Biome that's how Ancient and Brave have created their Biome product. I think what would be helpful if I go through the specific ingredients so you understand how it works with your digestive system. You have just 3 ingredients in it. You have your PHGG, and this is a prebiotic. Prebiotic is just fiber. Okay, that's what a prebiotic is. And so one of the things that we know about the gut microbiota is the greater the diversity of bacteria in the gut, the greater the functionality that it has. And the more diverse your diet, the more diverse the plant fiber and the polyphenols that you have, the greater the diversity of the gut microbiome. And so one of the prebiotics here is the PHGG. And so this is very supportive for the bifidobacteria and the lactobacillus bacteria. And it actually has some research supporting Akkermansia. Have you guys heard of Akkermansia? So you guys are on the west side of LA. so you can buy the individual species if you want, but the more foundational approach in working with that terrain would be you use a prebiotic. Again, you can do that through your diet, but a prebiotic here to help support the gut microbiota. So the prebiotic is your nourishment. Then, and then when you have a nourished gut microbiome, the gut microbiome produces something called short-chain fatty acids. Those short-chain fatty acids go on to feed other forms of bacteria. So you have these short-chain fatty acid producers. It also, this is so clever, is it goes to feed the barrier lining. So you have in the large intestine, you have all of the gut microbiome, and it's in that barrier lining, and it creates the short-chain fatty acids from the prebiotics, the fiber, and it helps to restore that so it doesn't tear. And then you have glutamine in here. And so glutamine is an amino acid, and that is used as fuel by the cells in the small intestine to be able to replicate. Why does that matter? So when people think of leaky gut, I often think they think of, it's leaky gut where the bacteria is. That's actually not true. So it's the small intestine. That's what people are referencing when they're talking about leaky gut. The small intestine is your place of absorption, and it's really where it's exposed to a lot of pathogens. And so you don't want those pathogens or undigested food getting into circulation, and then it's going to create a complete inflammatory cascade. So an example of that would be you have chronic fatigue, there are really significant rashes, eczema, psoriasis, lots of brain fog, right? That could mean that there's a whole lot of inflammation in the body. It, however, does not need to cross that barrier function to cause inflammation. So you might just have inflammation in that lining because of some undigested food that the immune system is recognizing as foreign. Or maybe you picked up a parasite from some food, and it's just in the gut there. It hasn't moved into circulation, which is a better place to be because you have a tight barrier function. Because you're less stressed. So that barrier function gets pierced with stress, alcohol, NSAIDs, antibiotics, and so forth. a lot of this has to do with stress, you'll see. You'll do a lot of damage to the gut microbiome with stress. So, so you have the glutamine helping to patch that up. Then you have something that's really interesting called a postbiotic. And this one here is called L137. What the postbiotic does, this one, is it really works with the immune system. So that bottom layer of your immune system. So it's helping to regulate what is your T cells. So without getting too complex, but I explain this to a lot of my clients. There's sort of two easy ways to look at the T cells. There's one part of it is responsible for fighting off pathogens, things like H. pylori, Epstein-Barr. And if you've been under chronic stress, exposed to mold for a really long time, maybe you have Lyme or co-infection, you're going to suppress that Th1, suppress the body's ability to fight off these pathogens. And then you can get this upregulation in autoimmunity and things like arthritis, psoriasis, rosacea, Hashimoto's would be another one. So you get this polarization. And so what this particular postbiotic does is it helps to rebalance that. So it really helps to calm the inflammation in the gut and then body-wise. So I really like this product. When I first looked at it with Ancient and Brave, I was like, what is this product doing? Because it's not a probiotic. It's like a complement to a probiotic, but it's working on that deeper layer of your immune system and the barrier function. So I'm very impressed with this product.
Amazing. So you've done extensive work with stress physiology and neurotransmitters, which we've touched on briefly. But from your experience, and it sounds like very, very intertwined, but how intertwined are digestion, stress response, and emotional state in the women that you work with today?
Don't we feel it straight away? Like when we're stressed, what happens? Yeah, when we're stressed, you start to become constipated. Like that motility shifts pretty much straight away. So that's one of the mechanisms behind cortisol. Through your enteric nervous system, it will start to shift that serotonin production, which is responsible for communicating to the muscles. What else happens, right? You start to get bloated, which may be completely independent from the constipation. So that bloating can be because of a change in the gut microbiome. It can be because the immune system has flared up. You could get a histamine reaction. You could get a mast cell reaction. So whenever you're eating food, it just triggers it. So that's when you really want to calm down the inflammation in the gut. And hormones will also have a piece with that. Mm-hmm. So, and there was a great study that came out of Japan about 10 years ago. It was a seminal study where they looked at med students and they followed them for 8 weeks, like leading up to their exams. They gave half the group fermented milk, so it's your probiotic, and they tracked what was going on with their gut microbiome, and they tracked the cortisol levels. And what they noticed was the group that was taking the fermented milk, they had a blunted cortisol response, so their resilience was stronger, and they had a better gut microbiome profile, plus the barrier function was more intact. So that just shows you just how powerful stress is in influencing the gut microbiome.
And how can prebiotics and postbiotics fit in here? Basically, how can they support the microbiome and gut environment in a way that feels stabilizing rather than overstimulating for someone who's already in this state of depletion and stress? So how could these fit in for someone who's already navigating this?
So given my nutrition background, it's always my preference that somebody is using their diet to alter a physical state. So ideally, you guys would all be eating 3 vegetables at lunch and 3 vegetables at dinner. So you would be getting all of the fiber and prebiotics necessary to support the gut microbiome. We know that that doesn't always happen. So that's where something easy like a prebiotic is helpful. And then going in the postbiotic, it's sort of super easy to add in because there's just an easy way to target the immune system. So for somebody who feels depleted, you can take a scoop of that rather than thinking and being too stressed about things. So somebody that's depleted, like that would say to me that they have low levels of cortisol, that they've had those stresses for a long time. So it's not this high level of cortisol, but it's actually started to drop off. And what cortisol does is that mucus layer that I was talking about in the beginning, right? It starts to reduce that. There's another piece called it's called SIG-A, and that's responsible for like tagging food. Like let's say you're stressed and you eat a piece of steak, and because you're stressed, you don't digest it well. You're just too busy thinking about something, so you're not chewing it. So it's getting to the stomach. There should be enough stomach acid there to break it down into a polypeptide. But because you're stressed, the stomach is not producing enough stomach acid, so it's less broken down. Then it gets to the small intestine. It should be worked on by your digestive enzymes and pancreatic enzymes, and it's all slow because you were stressed. Every one point leads to the next. So therefore, you have this, let's say it's a larger piece of food that is undigested, and the body is smart and it marks it as foreign. And so if it tags it as foreign, it's going to send an immune response out. It's going to send all of your macrophages and so forth out to, like the Pac-Man, right, to clear it from your system. But it's marked it as being a food sensitivity. Okay, so we don't really want that. We don't want you to, whenever you're eating steak, to start to get a reaction. So that secretory IgA that I was talking about, a part of that works with that mucosal layer, will grab onto it, basically give it a hug and say, don't tag it. So it's helping to reduce that inflammatory response in the gut. So if you're depleted, your immune system is going to be more upregulated. Okay, so there's those beautiful lifestyle practices that we have. This is the west side of LA, so everybody's probably doing their breath work and their meditation. That is an important piece. That's working with the vagus nerve. That's working with the enteric nervous system to really sort of calm things down.
How do you help clients understand this connection of the gut, skin, immune system without immediately sending them into restrictive protocols, elimination diets even, or just this general fear around food?
With a nutrition background, it's rare for you to put somebody on a restrictive diet because you understand the long-term importance of food. It might be for a temporary period of time while you are trying to figure out what's going on. But most of the time, it's not the food that's the issue. It's the way that the gut is responding to the food, your immune system, maybe the gut microbiome as well. So it's understanding those layers. And you're right with skin. Skin's one of the first places that it's actually going to show up. The immune system, you won't know so much, right? That's a little bit harder to understand. So I have a classic case with myself that I've just gone through. And I was, for about 3 months, I thought I had acne breakouts here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like perimenopause. I'm like having a reaction to dairy. Okay, I'm going to take dairy out. Take dairy out, doesn't go away. Geez, am I starting to react to wheat? Oh my goodness, what's going on? Am I just reacting to things? Is this just sort of part of this process now? And then I noticed that actually the acne wasn't going away. It wasn't clearing up. And then thought, maybe this is perioral dermatitis. Spoke to the esthetician and she was like, yeah, I think that's what it is. Here, take a steroid cream, do it for about 2 to 3 days, put it on, obviously it goes away, and then it flares up like nothing else. Around the same, this is over a 3 to 4 month process. This is recent. It's very, very recent. About 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I ran a gut microbiome stool test. Unbeknown to me, I had a parasite. That parasite in my gut was just producing this low-grade level of inflammation, and that inflammation in the gut was just communicating directly to this area here. And so as soon as I realized that, then I started working on killing the parasite with some more antimicrobials like wormwood, black walnut, a couple of other things. I was taking true biome anyway, so that's helping to decrease the inflammation and work with the gut barrier. Within 10 days, there was this huge shift in what was going on with my skin. So it was this reminder of how powerful the gut is with the skin. And now I work with skin issues, particularly really resistant acne. And I will often see that that's correlated to H. pylori, and H. pylori is in the stomach. So, and what H. pylori can do is it can lower the stomach acid. You get lower stomach acid, you are not absorbing your nutrients as well, you're not killing off bacteria as well, and it's more likely to create some level of inflammation. So there is a direct connection between the gut and the skin. And actually, when I was 25, I had horrible acne because my gut was just riddled with candida because I had been exposed to molds. And as soon as I cleaned up my diet, which is around the time I started studying nutrition, it really just cleared up.
That leads me into my next point here. So hormonal shifts, especially during perimenopause and menopause, can really change how the gut responds.
Yes.
So what are you seeing clinically during these phases of life for women, and how does gut support need to evolve?
The biggest thing that I will see with women in perimenopause, it's a horrible word, it's what women call them menobelly, where you just have this little belly that like pops out like that. And part of what that is. So you've got the fat that you can feel, the subcutaneous body fat. You've got visceral fat, which is the fat around the organs. That's not bad. We always hear that the visceral fat is bad. No, it's not. It holds the organs in place. We just don't want too much of it. Then it's also your gut microbiome could be playing into that. Like that's what's going on with the large and small intestine there. It's often what I see. There's bloating because if there's some gut issue. There can be a mast cell or histamine flare-up, which causes a whole lot of bloating and fermentation there. So it's important to understand those layers and what are you actually working with. With that particular client, I'm working on helping them lose a little bit of body fat. I'm probably running a stool test to understand what's going on in the digestive system. And then maybe I'm understanding a little bit more about the inflammation. So 70% of the immune system is in the gut. And that's part of your lymphatic system as well. So I do feel that in perimenopause and menopause, that lymphatic system just starts to get really stagnant. So if you're feeling like, okay, this is the menobelly, you can, do some simple things. It's like knowing that this is your lymphatic system is here. Like you can roll on a ball here to just help, shift that. Or you can do some abdominal massage there, which will help to calm things down. Now, what we see, and it's sort of, early research with declining progesterone levels, declining estrogen levels, is that it can start to make that barrier function have less integrity. It can decrease that mucosal layer, so decreasing that immunity there. And when you decrease that mucosal layer, particularly in the large intestine, it's like a lubricant, you can also get more constipation. The caveat that I have on that is that your diet and your stress has really more of a profound impact. So I don't want you to leave here thinking, okay, I'm in perimenopause or menopause and that's it, my gut is screwed because I have this reduction in the mucosal and the epithelial barrier. There's a lot that you can do. There's a lot that you have agency in terms of how to influence that. But really, number one being stresses. How do you manage your stress levels?
Outside of menopause, how do you see gut health interacting more broadly with hormones, such as our cortisol levels, our insulin, thyroid function, or even the menstrual cycle?
The gut microbiome is like the third stage of detoxification. It really mimics what is happening in the liver. And so with an appropriate level of the microbes, it's going to help to detoxify your hormones, your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone. Now, if there is a little bit of dysbiosis, that means there's more sort of opportunistic bacteria versus the good bacteria, things can start to shift. there is something called beta-glucuronidase. This is produced by the bacteria. And when this is elevated, what it will do is it will take these hormones and toxins that are on their way out. It will cleave off. They've been conjugated. It will cleave it off and it will push it back into the body. So therefore, you start to get this hormonal imbalance happening just because of what's going on in the gut. This is sort of very common that I see with women who are experiencing PMS. So this is where prebiotics, your diet can really have a profound impact. This is where your cruciferous vegetables are very helpful. I also understand that for people who are experiencing digestive issues, cruciferous vegetables can make things feel worse. And so if that's the case with you, right, there would be a temporary period of time where you might take that out, right, where you're healing, but you could do something like the prebiotic in here, which doesn't cause any bloating. When the gut microbiome is out of balance, right, you will get more fermentation from eating those vegetables, and so you get that gassiness. A good way to understand the gut microbiome without running a test is if you cannot tolerate legumes like your chickpeas and your lentils, it means that you don't have sufficient commensal bacteria. So as humans, we don't have the enzymes designed to break down the fiber that's actually in the legumes, but our gut microbiome does. So that's just a good insight. If you can't tolerate that, that's probably what's going on. So I said to Ancient and Brave when I was first trialing their product that I said, if your prebiotic is going to make people bloated, I'm going to get bloated from that. And at the time I had a parasite and I didn't know, and I didn't get bloated from that. So I was like, okay, win-win.
So if someone is starting from ground zero, they have no background in gut health or what to do, they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, where would you suggest they begin?
Understand that gut health is layered. So to me, a probiotic is still foundational. Like, take that probiotic and then use more of an advanced product like the True Biome, so that's working with the barrier function and it's working with your immune system. Like, those are two very easy things to do. I would say that is one. And then if you can start looking at your diet, like, I really encourage people, have 3 vegetables at lunch, 3 vegetables at dinner. It's sort of easy. Like, you could have a salad, you could have romaine lettuce with carrots and radish. In the evening, it could be broccoli, green beans, and asparagus. Just what I've seen through, I've been consulting for 20 years, a lot of people think that they are eating enough vegetables because they eat 1 vegetable at lunch and 1 vegetable at dinner, and they're just not. Like, if you can get 6 in, it will make a difference long term. So the gut microbiome will use the fiber, and they will use some of the nutrients in it, like the polyphenols and things like that, and the plant chemicals.
What if you have a hard time like that? Like, if sometimes eating more fiber makes things worse?
Yes. So like that, there's where the gut microbiome is most likely out of balance. And so like, you wanted to try to understand what might be going on there. The most common reason for that is that the sort of opportunistic bacteria has grown a little bit. So in cases like that, I use an antimicrobial which contains clove, thyme, and oregano oil to just lower that. I do stool testing, but I will say to my clients, I've been doing it for so long, that if you could just start with that, which is a $40 supplement, versus going and spending $350 on a stool test. And if that doesn't work in 2 weeks to help decrease it, then you can put the money towards it. There could be various reasons. It could be the bacteria, it could be the parasites, could be something else going on. It might not have anything to do with the gut microbiome, but that's the first place that you start. Yeah. Right? So like, what can happen is it's nothing to do with the gut microbiome, but it's your immune system going off. Mm-hmm. So if you've been exposed to toxins for a long time, I have one of my clients over there, I think she's still there. Actually, I have 2 of them. And it's like one in particular, when they eat food, right, their immune system was just flaring up. So they were reacting to everything. They were exposed to mold. So if you think of mold, like one of the most common molds would be penicillin. It's an antibiotic. So that's going to lower the good bacteria in the gut, and that's going to change like that mucosal layer that we were talking about. You're not going to have an immune system that's so robust. Another one, for just throw it in there, perimenopause and menopause. When you are getting the changing hormones, it changes how your body clears histamine. So I encourage my women who are in perimenopause to follow more of a low histamine diet. The reason for that is that you've got your declining progesterone. Progesterone helps clear histamine. Estrogen helps stabilize mast cells. Mast cells produce histamine and many other mediators. So as you've got your declining estrogen, you don't have that stabilization with the mast cells. So foods that are high in histamine are fermented foods. So you're often told when you have GI issues to have foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, kombucha. Not for my clients, right? They really react horribly to those things because it's producing this histamine response. So if you eat a diet that is a little bit more like a paleo style diet where you've got your protein and your vegetables and your fats, and you're not doing any fermented foods, you're not eating smoked salmon, you're not having yogurt, things like that, that can help lower the histamine.
Beautiful. Looking ahead, how do you see the future of gut health evolving? What is something that you would like to see more of moving forward, and maybe something you'd like to see less of?
I really want people to understand the importance of the immune system. Like, you've got 70% of your immune system in your gut. And we know, and I think almost everybody knows, everybody will say, okay, it's like some misfire with the immune system is a contributor to chronic diseases. So like, focus on the immune system. It's just not the gut microbiome. Things like the L137, the postbiotic, is very helpful for regulating that.
What about all these doctors who are prescribing prescription drugs all the time, whether it's a antidepressant or a prednisone for something or a sleep medication? I mean, doesn't that affect your gut microbiome?
It can affect your immune system, depends how long you're taking it for. So I don't know about the connection with antidepressants and the immune system. Clearly there's an impact with the serotonin. PPIs would be one of the ones that really negatively influence the gut. So with a lot of this, it's you have agency. You have to decide whether it's something that you want to take. And hopefully you're looking at these things more from a short-term perspective, as opposed to long-term.
I have a question. I've had migraines for like 20 years.
Mm.
In the last year and a half, it's gotten worse. I do take some medication for it, but with the onset of perimenopause and all of that, where do I start to try to get rid of them again?
I think of it two themes. If you were my client, I would say, okay, it could be a progesterone connection. And then the other piece would be, it could be a histamine connection. I'd have to understand a little bit more about what's going on.
I recently did one of those function health.
So the function health is giving you just a snapshot of your blood, and so not looking at a stool test at all. The best thing to do would be to work with a practitioner who can then go through that. There are a couple of ones out there that you can buy. I just don't think they're as good, or you don't really understand it so much. I mean, there's one company out there where they extrapolate a lot of the data, and it becomes confusing. So one of it is, okay, we're noticing that you're low in this species, so therefore you should eat alfalfa because this species produces vitamin K. That's not a fair assumption, so it confuses you. Yeah, but I would work with somebody on that. So typically, I'm going to set up their diet that they would start their day with protein. That's how I would start it. Just pure protein. Easy, simple. They can have eggs, they can have chicken sausages, they can have leftover turkey or steak from the night before. It just shouldn't be complex. And then they build. So then the next piece for lunch would be you have your protein, you have your 3 vegetables, you have fat. So I go 3-2-1. That's the concept. 3 vegetables, 2 fats, 1 protein. I don't get my clients to think through the lens of macros or calories. I want them to think about food, about the nutrients in it. And if you're thinking, how much protein should I be eating? Whatever your height is, in feet and inches, I'm 5'4". Right? So I'm going to use somebody else. What are you? 5'5". 5'5". 5 ounces of protein at lunch. 5 ounces of protein at dinner. Like 5'4" and less, probably 4 ounces. 5'7", 5'8", 7 ounces of protein, 8 ounces of protein. Now maybe 5'10", you're going 8 to 10, right, to get sufficient protein. So you don't want it to be complicated, right? And then you go to a snack, right? Keep it simple, keep it small, right? Nutrient dense. Maybe it's a fun food, maybe it's not. Fruit is great. I don't think that fruit is negative. Just like, you got a banana, an apple, a pear. You've got all the phytonutrients in those. You like a Greek yogurt, great. It's fantastic for your calcium. It's got some protein in it. Maybe you're getting a handful of nuts. Maybe for some of your clients, the nuts don't work with the digestive system. And then dinner is where there's a lot more variety. 3 vegetables, 1 protein, 1 fat like olive oil. Throw in some carbs. And the carbs really depend on the level of activity. 75% of the day, breakfast, lunch, snack, you shouldn't think too much about it. It should just be automatic like that. And the biggest question is, what am I going to have for dinner? Now, in terms of my clients, like your clients, unfortunately, grains can be reactive in the gut. Not for everybody, but it can be. So if I'm taking out something, I might take out grains for that subset of client, but I'm keeping in the carbohydrates. I'm keeping in the sweet potato and the Japanese yams and the potatoes. Maybe they can't handle the legumes yet because they've got to work on restoring the gut microbiome. But they get to have all of their macronutrients. Like a big one is, for how long have we been saying don't eat, this field has been saying don't eat wheat or gluten? When I was studying in 2001, in the UK, it was actually a little bit more advanced than the US. We're telling people not to eat wheat. I am so happy I eat wheat. My body doesn't like dairy, but there are little tests that can tell you that. But you also want to tune into your body. I know people have a funny connection to the scale. The scale can be helpful to see if there's an inflammatory reaction. I eat rice, and this has been happening for 6 years. Next day, the scale's up by 2 pounds every single time. It happened to me 2 days ago. And so that's just an inflammatory reaction. I shouldn't be eating rice. It's not for me. It's not for my body. So there are little things that you can do that don't cost that much money to give you some insight.
So say you have a histamine response to a lot of these like healthy foods, like pineapple, avocado, a lot of these. Where would you start breaking out how to sort of respond?
So as you can tell, your immune system's it's hypervigilant, it's overreacting. Go into the gut, right? Work there, but there's something else that's triggered it. So I would ask you a couple of questions about mold is in your environment that might be behind it.
Is that like a stool test sort of thing?
Well, the gut microbiome would be a stool test.
Okay.
But mold and mycotoxins will really increase the histamine response. And so if it's raining, right? If you notice that there's a leak in the house, or maybe there's some cracked paint, there's mold in your bathroom, you have a front-loading washing machine, check that. Unfortunately, if you live on the west side of LA, it's riddled with mold. I lived in Santa Monica and I got a huge mold exposure. So it's something like that has altered the immune system. But mold and mycotoxins are a big one. So, and that's not a stool test. You would do a urine test to test for that. And it's working backwards. I'm going to keep going back to the product, but just start adding that in because that'll help to calm things in there. Calm things.
What are peptides, and what's the difference between a pill form, injectable, a patch? And this is also a second question, is there such thing as over-supplementation?
There's definitely such a thing as over-supplementation. And there's definitely such a thing as over-peptide usage. I am just seeing people's supplement budgets go up from 100 to 500. It's unnecessary. What you want to do, not need, but what you want to do is you prioritize. What is the priority? Now, if you're taking a number of supplements, so one of your friends here, Alexa, is my client, and she's had to go on a supplement routine, which is pretty extensive because we were working on a number of things. That's not indefinite, right? And so the goal is, right, we shrink it down, right? After we've worked on it and we've got resolution, we just bring it down. So choose one or two areas that you want to be working on. So that might be gut health, and maybe that's it. It might be gut health and skin. I'm constantly tweaking things with my clients. Almost every time I'm having a conversation with them, I'm moving one thing in and out, so that it's just not this overwhelm. We want to trust in the wisdom of the body. So I'll just touch a little bit on peptides. So peptides are the catalyst. Your body produces a lot of these peptides. So when we're talking about the peptides today, which is what you're referencing, it is just helping to support a particular process that is not functioning as well as it should.
I already asked one, but I'm just really curious about the CBT work, because I had a really interesting mental health type of crisis, and after COVID, and it really, like, my brain just did something extremely weird, and everyone was like, CBT, CBT, CBT.
So CBT, it stands for cognitive behavioral therapy, and the traditional way of looking at it is that you have a thought that produces an emotion that produces a behavior. And so it might be relevant for you, or it might not be relevant. So a client who's really struggling to change some behaviors around her food. She comes from ED background, and so it's actually very difficult to change the patterning, because for her, the success of the ED treatment meant overeating food. And now she's in a different place where any thought of making changes to the diet, any change to the diet, really sets off, the way I'd describe it, sets off her nervous system, right? It's almost like the survival instinct is kicking in. And then she has the other piece of everything that we see on the algorithm. I shouldn't eat carbs. I should eat 100 grams of protein. I shouldn't eat legumes. I have the list. I forget what it was. And so that's where CBT is really helpful to go, okay, this is your belief, and we're going to reframe it. So let's say it's all carbs are bad. The reframing around that is just more of an education. So this is, okay, these carbs they're not bad. From a fat loss perspective, I'll just get clear on this. Right? You will hear that calories don't matter. Yes, they do, right? You still need to be in a caloric deficit to be able to lose. The body is not going to go in and use your body fat as a fuel source if it doesn't have to. But just because you are in a caloric deficit doesn't mean that you will lose weight, right? As I'm sure some of you have seen, right? With hormone changes, other things, complicated changes to the mitochondria, environmental toxins, right? But you have to be in a caloric deficit to be able to lose. But because the opposite isn't true, right? You are told through social media that that's not the case. It's all to do with your carbohydrates. And by the way, I trained under that model, that it was carbs were not the thing. You needed to regulate your insulin levels. And if you did that, the weight would fall off. I got into practice and realized that wasn't true. But it was empowering. It was empowering for me because I grew up in the Atkins era. And so then when I realized you could actually eat carbohydrates as long as you kept it in those calories, I was like, great. I can now have this great relationship with these carbohydrates, which in the past I didn't. And so, that's what CBT can do. It can just give you an education around it.
I was wondering if you could talk more about like psoriasis in your gut.
Yes. So the gut microbiome that's the final part. So your liver does all of this work, and then it puts it into the gut to actually clear it out. But if you're dealing with heavy metals, something like a binder to actually grab it would be helpful. And then glutathione, which is going to support the phase 2 liver detoxification. And then you want to make sure that you have a replete gut microbiome so that it goes out. Going back to we're talking about with the estrogen, right, of things can get cleaved off and shoved back into the body. That can happen in the gut microbiome. You can test for that too. But the gut microbiome is a very important part of the detoxification process. So if you have to take antibiotics, don't panic, right? You can restore your gut microbiome. It's okay. You know where it goes, right? I can't take anything. Yeah, so you'll be, it's okay.
Do you recommend cycling through a probiotic protocol for like 6 months and taking a break?
I've been taking the same probiotic for 10 years, and I would stop it. Like I'd take it for 6 months, but then something would happen. And then I'd have to take it again. So now I just stick it all the way through.
So I want to be conscious of the time. Thank you everybody for all your questions. We want to open up this space so that you guys can mingle, ask more questions, but we're going to wrap up more of the formal interview now. One more question for you, Donna. What is one small shift that you wish more women would know and maybe leave with today?
So it's really breath work. One would be before bed, particularly to help with sleep, is belly breathing. Who's done belly breathing here? Good. Okay, so just those who haven't, put your hands on your belly, take a deep breath in, feel the expansion of that in your belly, drop it in, breathe it out. And then if you're just doing that nice rhythmic response, I do this just before I go to bed. I put my feet up on the headboard. That clears the lymphatic system in your brain. You do it with an eye mask for 5 minutes, 7.5 minutes. Your HIV is going to skyrocket if you wear it, and you will get a deeper level of sleep. Very easy one to do. Then another one that I do is a Kundalini Kriya called Fists of Anger. And this is a much more active practice. This is when you're tense and stressed, and I do it before I get on a panel. And this one goes like this, and you're breathing through your mouth, but you can Google that one there. But I use those two breath practices. I find them to be very powerful. You got box breathing and things like that. I don't find that particularly powerful. But I really like the belly breathing because it is so calming. And if you track, you'll see this change.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.